think you've heard all the stories regarding the 2016 NFL Draft? Well, I challenge you today as Neil and I go behind the scenes, focusing on the Atlanta Falcons as we talk all about that 2016 NFL Draft. From the 17th overall pick, Keanu Neal, to the draft room reaction to the Laremy Tunsil video, how we, as the Atlanta Falcons, drafted 5 starters, plus had a UDFA haul that was a significant part of the Super Bowl run. The 2016 NFL Draft nearly 10 years ago, and the subject of our very own Neil Stratton's brand new book, Value Picks, the drama, decisions, and details behind 8 selections in the 2016 NFL Draft. If you love stories from inside the draft room, this one is for you. So let's go. Let's get inside that 2016 NFL Draft here on Scouting the League. Everyone, and welcome to a special Tuesday episode of Scouting the League. This one will be all about that 2016 NFL Draft and Neil's new book, Value Picks. But take a second now before we jump in. Set your clocks for noon Eastern tomorrow. Neil and I will be back, and we will dive into the 2025 NFL Draft with NFL.com lead draft writer Eric Edholm. Some fascinating conversations heading into the top of the draft this year. Quarterbacks, the Heisman Trophy winner, the best defensive player in the draft, a bunch more of storylines. Again, a ton of questions at the top of the NFL Draft, even those that think they have the answers. Again, I'm going to guess we'll get some surprises comes Thursday night. Eric will certainly have some answers for us. Perhaps we'll try to get inside the minds of some of these NFL teams. But noon tomorrow, live on YouTube. Be there, hit us questions. We will be taking questions live as we stream. So look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Once you've set those reminders, make sure you give us a like, subscribe, and share wherever you are watching and listening. Let us know your thoughts, what questions you want to ask Eric, or any questions you want us to answer on our upcoming episodes. Check us out on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Megaphone, or our home over at Fans First Sports Network. Let's get to the man whose third book sets the stage for today's conversation, Neil Stratton. He is at Inside the League on X, InsideTheLeague.com. SucceedInFootball.com is his blog. And head over to Amazon.com. Wherever books are sold, get that new book, Value Picks. I am Rodrik David at RightStepADV. RSAFootball.com is my website. Again, my time with the Atlanta Falcons will be the focus for today. Scouts, aspiring scouts, make sure you check out thescoutingcommunity.com for all things football. Neil, another huge undertaking. You've crossed the finish line for a third time. Value Picks is out. It's ready for consumption. First off, let me say congratulations. Has to feel good. Again, 1 book, 2 books, 3 books. A third book out there, 2016 NFL Draft. Congrats. Has to feel good.
I appreciate it. It feels kind of like my first book because, my first one, Moving the Chains, was really more of a compilation of a newsletter series that I'd written a few years ago. My second one was more of a compilation of several different events that we had where I kind of transcribed them, and it was kind of long form interviews with different scouts that I kind of turned into a book and maybe kind of sussed it up a little bit with other stuff. This is the first one that I wrote. Every bit of it was narrative style, and I did more interviews than I can count with current and former scouts and got the backstory on a lot of things. The genesis of this was initially the idea of a book was I was going to write something about the Laremy Tunsil draft, just simply because that was such a unique situation. I call it the OJ and the White Bronco situation for the NFL draft fans, because everybody kind of remembers where they were when they were watching that, including the scouts for 32 NFL teams who were watching it in real time. So it was a tremendous opportunity, I thought, because of the draft. But and again, as I dug into it more and learned kind of more about who was picked that year and kind of the careers they had, it became more of let's focus on some of the players. And it turned out to be 8 players that we're kind of looking at. And so it was a lot of fun to write. It was not easy. again, because this is the first one that every bit of it, none of it was me just basically copying stuff that other people had said. It was actually me having to write it and create it and all those kind of things and shape it and what have you. And sometimes edit it a little bit to protect the name. Some of my friends were maybe a little too candid. But it was fun, and I'm glad that it's done, and it is nice to have it done now for the promotion and the sales and all that kind of stuff, and I guess that's kind of why we're here. But it is fun, and it's been a lot of fun talking to lots of people about this draft. Anytime you get to talk ball with people that you respect, it's a golden opportunity, and if nothing else, that I got that out of this because it's always great to be able to share that with someone who else loves the game and remembers what it was like in 2016 and knows how it is today. So I appreciate the congratulations. I'm real excited about it.
Yeah, it is. It's one of the funny things is we've gotten ready for this podcast and we talk about the specifics of the 2016 NFL Draft. My first year with the Atlanta Falcons, and it kind of over the years. You see the forest, and when you start focusing in, you think back, and it's funny, every one of these draft picks that we'll talk about the Falcons took, plus some of the UDFAs that were a big part of that Super Bowl run. I've got a story on I think 5 of the 6 guys, the 5 guys that really stuck around in Atlanta. Like, again, really unique, funny stories about, again, the process or something that happened through the process or even after they were drafted. And so, again, that's where you think back on that time. And, again, you think about the wins and the losses, Super Bowl runs, the good drafts, but some of the really fun stories that you can sit back and laugh and smile and just the unique interactions you have with some of these guys. And it was a big draft for Thomas. Obviously, Dan Quinn's second year. Thomas had been there a good while at that point and needed a good draft, and we knew that going in. We had hit on some big free agents, and Alex Mack and Mohamed Sanu were a big part of it. But again, Arthur Blank expected results at that point, which really set the stage for everything we did. It was, again, another year with Dan Quinn's system. Again, you think that Seattle system, you think that 4-3 Leo system, which, again, as DQ, credit to him, has evolved. He's gotten away from it. It's harder to play with that system. But again, the table was set, and from the moment I got there on February 1st, 2016, as a full-time employee, I'd spent a couple weeks in the 2015 training camp. It was really all about they were lined up for free agency, and it was all about getting everything lined up for the draft at that point, which, man, what a time to join an organization when you're getting ready to go to the combine and get ready for the draft.
Well, let's talk about this now. You're entering, as we enter the 2016 draft, this is going to be Dan Quinn's second season. Obviously, he's a defensive-minded coach, but on offense, your OC is Kyle Shanahan. I believe your quarterback's coach is Matt LaFleur. Mike
correct.
McDaniel is an offensive assistant.
Correct.
Raheem Morris is on staff and in a role that I can't recall. That's 5 current NFL head coaches that were on that staff. That's remarkable, and that's a lot of talent. Now, the previous season, as you might suspect with that kinds of offensive brain power, Julio Jones had put up an unbelievable season, even by Julio Jones standards. Meanwhile, Devontae Freeman runs for 1,000 yards, I believe, 11 touchdowns, goes to the Pro Bowl. You've got everything working on offense, but your sacks leader has 4, Vic Beasley, your first rounder. But there's reason for optimism. You had drafted Grady Jarrett the year before. Again, Beasley, he didn't have a Hall of Fame career. He had his ups and downs, but at least you had a guy that you felt like you're going into the second year in the system. Maybe there's cause for optimism there. My guess now, Matt Ryan, top of his game, unbelievable season. I have a lot of respect for him as a quarterback, but you also you could argue that the 3 top quarterbacks in the league were in the NFC South. You had Drew Brees in New Orleans, obviously. You had Cam Newton coming off a Super Bowl appearance, a 15-1 season in 2015. So you've got to be able to rush the passer. I presume that had to be a priority going in. Let's start with your first pick, which you've already kind of mentioned. You chose a safety, which to me, now again, were you under Thomas more of a best player available oriented team, or were you looking to fill needs like let's be honest, most teams are in the modern era.
Yeah, so the Keanu Neal pick, think and I'll pose this question to you, Neil. When you think Seattle defense, who were the top 2 or 3 players that's the Super Bowl teams for Seattle?
Right.
Who were the dudes?
Right, right. Well, the one the Jets traded for, whose name escapes me right now, you had the kid out of Virginia Tech who was really more of a kind of a linebacker type. But I mean, Legion of Boom, obviously, safeties
Legion
are a
of
critical
Boom,
part of it.
and the player that made it work. That in 2016, the defensive staff, Dan Quinn, we had to have Cam Chancellor. We
Mhm.
need to make the defense function the way Dan Quinn wanted it to work. We needed Keanu Neal. That was, again, by every metric, he was a unicorn. He was, again, a linebacker size, bigger than our second round pick, who was a really good linebacker. He could play in the box. He could cover enough. He was probably a numbers coverage player from the deep middle. He could match up on tight ends. He was going to win versus a lot of running backs. Keanu Neal was the piece that we needed to make that defense function. Obviously, the pass rush, yeah, you mentioned it. Again, I amazingly, I forget to mention that we did sign, I believe, Dwight Freeney late in the free agency process that year to kind of come in and be another pass rush guy. Dwight still wanting to go, obviously was part of that Super Bowl run. Good for the younger guys. But Keanu Neal was we needed a guy that could be a will linebacker, could be a strong safety, could be a free safety, could be a nickel coverage defender. And Keanu Neal coming out of Florida was that guy. Congratulations on the retirement. And Keanu Neal as a person is a Hall of Fame person. He was the class that one of those things I remember. Keanu got that first round class, said we are all going to sign our rookie contracts together. I believe it was the first day that every player was in the building. Contracts were signed. We were after a few years when Atlanta had issues getting that first or second overall pick signed, Keanu got that rookie group together and said, hey, we're going to be not just the rookies. We're going to help lead this thing. And as a rookie, Keanu was that guy. So the player was special. He could do all those things. Again, anybody probably remembers an older injured Achilles, ACL, Keanu Neal, and that really affected him. But those early years, Keanu was what Cam Chancellor was in Seattle and made that defense work on the field. And again, off the field, I just can't say enough about the impact he had on everybody on that roster as a rookie, the alpha male, the guy that made it all work. Tremendous guy. Again, was going to treat everybody, including lowly scouting assistants like myself, on his visits. Anytime we had anything to do with him, again, he was outstanding, and he's going to be successful. I'm sure he's going to have a lot of really good opportunities. But Keanu was a little bit of an outlier. He was, I believe, most of the mediaites had him around 35th best player. We took him at 17. We knew he was our guy early on in the process, and it was going to be, barring something crazy happening, he was going to be our pick at 17. The funny one was, again, we all know what PFF is now. PFF was still pretty new back in 2016, and I was sitting there about an hour and a half before the draft. Me, James Bodenheimer, the two scouting assistants, have done cut-ups, had done X, Y, and Z preparing for it, and Thomas walks into our office, and hour and a half before the draft, it's going to be serious. He's like, hey, the owner, Arthur Blank, somebody just sent him something that, Keanu has more missed tackles than anybody in college football. So it's like, I need you to run through all his games this year and tag it's like, so we got like 12 or 13 games, and so, Bodie takes half of my, and we are just burning it. And there's a cut up in the system already that says Keanu Neal missed tackles. We had to do it again. We got to verify it again, and so we're just burning this thing, trying to get the draft room ready. And again, thankfully, I think it came out like 1 or 2 snaps within that same number. Again, walk down, hey Thomas, cut up's ready. Okay, we're good, thanks. Like, wait, you're good on like we're going to take a look at it, or we're good on, hey, that work was, we're good on feeling good about him. So the PFF aspect of it was a big part of it. But again, it all came down to Dan Quinn, Thomas Dimitrov, our scouting staff, I believe Anthony Robinson, Tumbo, Bonaconda, guys that had done their work in the Southeast. And again, that was everybody felt really good about that pick. Again, from the strength staff to the medical staff. Again, he was just a really, really good pick for a bunch of reasons. And again, had a good career, short career, but a good career in Atlanta, and obviously bounced around here and there. But again, a really good player.
Was Mr. Blank normally that heavy-handed? That surprised me a little. Was he normally that a guy that you had to persuade before you made the pick, the first rounder?
So my impression of Arthur Blank was always he was going to ask really tough questions, whether you call it heavy-handed. He wanted to, if nothing else, verify that you felt as strongly as you came across the first time. He was certainly going to navigate the ship. He and as his kids have gotten older, they have started to navigate with him a little bit. But Arthur was always involved. He wanted to know that you had the conviction on these guys. And again, if he heard something, he was again from a minority owner, from somebody in the media that he knew, from again whether it was Rich McKay, who was part of the process as well. Again, he was going to challenge you to do the work, and whether he was just asking a question to verify or if he truly wanted the answer. Again, he was a major part of the process, especially for those really day one, day two guys, and Keanu, where he was going to be a part of it. He was going to have to answer questions, and we certainly got beat up in the media for taking Keanu where we did. But again, I think that the proof from that year and really the next couple of years, the successful seasons we had before it really went south were a credit to making the right pick there.
Now, how early did y'all identify Neil as pretty much the guy? Was it like pre-combine? Was it post-combine? Was it pro day? When exactly?
Yeah, going into the combine, there were probably 3 or 4 players that were going to be the guys. Again, guys that you realistically expected to be there at 17. We knew we needed multiple starters from this draft. So again, you ratchet that pressure up, which also means you're probably not going to be able to move up from 17. So again, you identify some of those players you expect to be there at 17. But again, it was Keanu's position to lose was being our draft pick. That was very much, again, from top 30 visits. We did a lot of work on guys like, again, Miles Jack was a part of that group. And Jaden Smith from Notre Dame coming off the injury. And there were some other really good players that we brought in, had conversations with. But it was Keanu's spot to really hold on to. And he held on to it and probably tightened the grip throughout the process.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, we're going to talk about the players featured in the book later, but I can't get out of the first round, especially given the fact that y'all picked at 17 without talking about Laremy Tunsil and getting your take on how that happened. And if you gave any thought, given the fact that you've got a blue chip quarterback and a blue chip offensive staff, that maybe you thought, wow, getting one more guy like this at left tackle, can take us through that. And was that ever part of the decision process at all?
No. Again, and that was where it was interesting in Atlanta. Within our draft room, we had our scouts table. I'm kind of in the middle where I can kind of me and Bodie, the scouting assistant, is kind of managing the boards. Thomas, DQ, ownership up at the front table. There's kind of tech people, there's cat people, kind of all around. Well, over in one of the corners, there's 2 big TVs. One's on NFL.com, muted. One of them's on ESPN, muted, just so you can see different stories coming up and doing all that kind of stuff. We had Jake Matthews. We weren't going to take a left tackle. We were pretty set on the offensive line. We had Ryan Schrader playing right tackle. Again, he was under contract. We felt good about both those guys. So offensive line, offensive tackle was not going to be a priority position. And had Laremy fallen to 17, I don't think he's our pick either way. The wild part about it is we're sitting there, and again, Thomas is having his conversations, with Arthur, with DQ. It's a very quiet. Again, it's amazing how fast and intense that 3 hours is sitting in a draft room. and all of a sudden it pops up there, and you start seeing the video, and everything kind of goes quiet. Again, he's not going to be our pick, but again, the draft room goes quiet. Thomas grabs the remote, turns up the volume. We're listening to it. Thomas asks A-Rob, asks Tumbo a question about him. Again, whether we had the answers or not, so in the report, again, he wasn't a guy that we were real interested in. So, again, it was, I'm guessing, knowing our guys, knowing Tumbo, knowing A-Rob, they had the full story. They probably knew this was coming out. That's how good they were. And it was, hey, kind of watch him start to fall. But for us, the transition was right back to pick 17. And again, seeing the numbers come off, you always have a fear that that guy that you really want, somebody's going to jump up in front of you and grab. You never know with the first round. You never know, again, your division rivals. Again, everybody always trying to, steal it. Again, with the Seahawks, with where they were, with other coaches that were going to maybe try to implement that system. He was kind of that unicorn that system needed. So it was an interesting 15 to 20 minutes as we kind of followed it, but it died down quickly, and then was kind of just a later conversation of, wow, that was actually kind of wild what just happened.
Okay, so at pick 52 of the second round, you took Deion Jones out of LSU. Was he going to be, I mean, if Keanu Neal was going to be your Cam Chancellor, was the plan for Deion Jones to be your Bobby Wagner?
Matt, you hit the nail on the head. Again, you start modeling your defense after what's been really successful. And again, Bobby Wagner has done it for a really long time. And again, he may be a Hall of Fame type linebacker. Deion did it really, really well for a short time. And the questions that came out for Deion were weight. And, I don't think that it was any surprise for anybody that's followed the Falcons was, again, when he was about 20 pounds lighter than your strong safety, again, you always have concerns. But the question on Deion wasn't, is he going to be able to sustain it? Is it, can we make sure he is in the right positions? Again, he's not going to stack blocks. He's not going to be coming down hitting fullbacks. He's going to be lateral. He's going to be running sideline to sideline. And he's going to be taking away Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, those slot dynamic running backs that you've got to cover in man-to-man. Like, he could do that. Again, he was among the best for several years at doing that. And again, he was a name that popped up, really a one-year production guy, which caused us to do a lot of extra work. LSU had, it seemed like, one after another there, coming through the linebacker room, getting drafted in the top 3 rounds, and Deion was kind of the next guy. And so the weight was a big question, and then how fast was he? And LSU did a fantastic job bringing in a little extra sand, packing their turf down for that pro day to where when Deion ran 4.41 on one stopwatch, again, it helps when you're running on a track more or less as opposed to a turf football field. But again, the speed questions were answered in that way, and Deion was a bubbly personality. He was going to bring a lot of energy. You could always hear Deion on the field, and he was a guy that was certainly part of a 2 or 3 guy group. And we'll talk about one of the other linebackers here later. But he was a part of there were probably 5 to 8 linebackers throughout the draft, and he was one of them. And the top one that, man, if we can get Deion, he's really, again, you talk about if the defense is going to work, we need Keanu. We need a guy that can fly sideline to sideline and cover these running backs, and Deion certainly fit that middle.
Was LSU known for kind of manipulating their field to try to enhance their players' 40 times?
It was not a surprise to anybody on our staff. Again, credit to our scouts that did the area. Shepley Hurd was part of that group, again, along with A-Rob and those guys. Again, they told us ahead of time. When you start talking about pro days and stuff, it's like Deion's going to run really fast, and it's like, well, how? Like, what did they? Well, this is what they do. They run again, and there's probably more than one school that does it. And again, when you're wanting players to run fast, hey, that's you see less players run at the combine and run at their pro day. There's probably a reason why, and that may be one of them right there. So it was not a surprise to us when he dropped a crazy number. Again, knowing with a little grain of salt that it may not truly be that fast on a football field, but again, fast is fast. So.
Austin Hooper out of Stanford went at 81. Now we've seen tight ends and Kyle Shanahan's offense do big things. Was the vision that this guy's going to be a real part of our offensive attack, or was it again a situation where here's a good player that we can't afford to pass up on?
Yeah, again, a little bit of both. Again, we had Jacob Tamme, a seasoned veteran, a good player. We also, I'm going to draw a blank on his name. We had a big Hawaiian, Polynesian
Oh yeah,
that was part of the group as well. So
more of a third tackle though, right?
yes, yeah, he was a big, again, big possession, goal line blocker type. And Austin, I believe at the time was only 19 or 20. He was a super super young player, and again, in kind of that same mold. Again, Stanford had a number of tight ends come through there, and again, Austin was kind of the next one, high upside, really smart, was going to be able to pick up that playbook early on. And again, he was kind of one of those guys where, again, hey, where's this guy going to go? Well, we probably were thinking going to be third round. He was tagged again along with 2 or 3 tight ends that you start really doing your work on. And I mean, Austin was every definition of California cool on his visit, as laid back as chill. My Austin Hooper story. So this is back during the time when if a player had not graduated, he could not come to training camp. So Austin comes, does 2-day rookie minicamp, goes back to Stanford, and Stanford, I think they were finishing up school almost at the beginning of June. And so Austin comes flying back in June, and again, being a scouting assistant, hey, Austin's done with school. He's flying in this night. He's supposed to get in around 7, 8 o'clock or at night or whatever. Atlanta Airport's an hour from where our facility's at, where players are staying. Players are staying at hotels down by the Mall of Georgia. So I head down to the airport. I pick Austin up. Well, somehow between all the lines of communication that needed to happen, the hotel was not notified that this player had a room and it was going to be checking in. So I get there and they're like, hey, yeah, we can't check him in. He's sharing a room for a couple weeks with one other player. If that player's not here, we can't check him in. Security, safety, blah, 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 whatever. Wow. So I'm like, hey, so I'm trying to call people. It's at this point, it's like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. I can't get a hold of anybody. I'm like, all right, well, let's just get him his own room. Hey, we're booked up tonight. Could you call the hotel right next door? Their whole, like, again, it was a Friday or Saturday. Every hotel was booked. And again, in the California cool Austin Hooper, he's like, hey, bro, let's just go down to Waffle House and get something to eat real quick. So I'm like you see, like I'm panicking. Like this is our 3rd round pick. We got to find a spot for him to sleep. And he's like, no, bro, let's just go get some Waffle House. So we go, a couple buildings down and we're sitting there getting some Waffle House. I'm like looking at my phone every time. Like I can't get a hold of anybody. I'm like, I don't know what we're going to do here. Like how far am I going to have to drive to a hotel? And where we're just getting our like 10:30 at night Waffle House in Atlanta, and he's like, hey bro, you got a couch? I'm like, yeah, I got a couch. He's like, just let me come sleep on your couch. I'm like, sorry, what? You're good coming to sleep on my couch? And at the time, I'm living with somebody that was working on the grounds crew, somebody in equipment, and somebody with the video for the Falcons. So I group text them. I'm like, hey guys, this cool? And they're like, I'm not here. I'm gone for the weekend. He's like, yeah, it's fine. He's like, I'm like, Austin, you're serious about sleeping on my couch? He's like, yeah, man, like I'll sleep and we'll go get it tomorrow. So I'm like, finish up our Waffle House. We drive over. He's like, this couch. I'm like, you want my bed? He's like, no, man, the couch is good. Like, yeah. I'm like, wow. Like, and it's just kind of funny. We go to bed. It's like midnight by the time we get there. He's got to be in for early meetings, get checked in, paperwork, all that kind of stuff the next morning. And he looked like he had just rolled out of bed. He had a little bit of bed head, couch head, but again, he was like, couldn't have been more appreciative. It was no big deal at all to him. And again, was really fun to see him kind of evolve, blossom. Again, his presence in that offense grew more and more throughout the year. Had a good career in Atlanta before. Now he's bounced around a few spots. And again, just a good, solid, consistent, not dynamic, but again, he's an NFL player. And I'll never forget, again, that night when Austin Hooper slept on the couch with me and my guys. So it's those are the fun stories, right?
So where did he wind up? I mean, what did you finally have to do? Were you able to get him in the team hotel eventually?
Again, the hotel's policy was that because he had a roommate, the roommate had to be there to, again, I don't know, verify, make sure he was there. Again, whatever reason, I'm not sure we used that hotel again after that year. And again, I understand hotel policy. I'm just thankful that Austin and again, whoever's roommate, everything was good after that. And thankfully, I didn't receive any tongue lashings or reprimands from our brass on having our third round pick sleep on the couch.
Man, I got a story about sleeping situation in the Hula Bowl that I won't share right now, but boy, it went exactly the opposite of the way yours did. What a pain in the butt that was.
Yeah.
The short story, I had to sleep in a wicker love seat as executive director of the Hula Bowl. I'm not the
You're
smallest
not a
guy.
short guy, Neil.
It was not a comfortable situation, and anyway. Okay, moving on. Fourth round, 115, Devondre Campbell out of Minnesota. Was he a guy that, again, kind of was there and you couldn't pass him up, or was he a critical part of what Dan Quinn was trying to do with the defense there?
Yeah, so Devondre was a guy that we had tagged really early in the process and did a ton of work on. And everybody listening is probably remembering what happened to Devondre Campbell this year in San Francisco. And whether the issues were the same, we had significant questions off the field that we had to answer. And again, Devondre's at what year 10, year 11. He's had a good NFL career. He was a really good, very underrated player in my opinion for a long time. But we had a ton of work to do. You talk about a guy that was, again, if Deion Jones was Bobby Wagner, there was this guy in Seattle named KJ Wright. Very much the opposite. Big, long, speed builder, your tight end shutdown guy. And that was what Devondre was. At Minnesota, Devondre had some games where he looked like a first or second round pick. It was really special to watch him play, but there would be games where you would watch 60 snaps and you would have a hard time finding Devondre. The inconsistencies were there. They were relevant. They were major, major concerns. Jeff Ulbrich, our linebacker coach at the time, did a ton of work with Devondre, did visits, did conversations, whether it was combine, whether it was that top 30 visit. If anybody remembers the Queso story, Devondre Campbell was the other linebacker that was there. We had two linebackers. Devondre was the other one. Devondre, super, super quiet, a very to himself kind of guy that there were, again, all the off-field. I don't want to get into the specifics of the off-field stuff. I don't know what happened with Devondre. We knew there were going to be some of those growing pains off the field that we had to deal with. And again, huge credit to Jeff Ulbrich and then Aiden Dirty, who is still in the NFL now, was kind of a QC guy on defense that spent a ton of time with Devondre too. And again, when you start thinking about two rookie linebackers that we were expecting to play, again, Deion's going to be his fast speed running back guy. Devondre is going to shut down, Greg Olsen is going to shut down the tight ends that we see week in and week out. He can absolutely smother those guys with his length. Also, one of the most consistent space tacklers that we had in Atlanta during that time, which again, DQ's system really asked you to make tackles in space. He was really, really special, excelled in that way. And again, Devondre came in, he bought into what we were doing on defense and had a bunch of really, really good years in Atlanta. And again, I don't know if Devondre remembers the queso drinker, but again, he was part of that visit and was really fun. Was a guy that, again, was good to cut it up with in the hallway over his years. And before he went to Green Bay and eventually San Francisco, a year in Arizona, again, really, really successful career. And I hope personally, I hope whatever he was dealing with there in San Francisco, he takes care of, because you don't, with other stories that have come out recently about Kyron and other past players, you don't want that path to be the ultimate destination for him.
Mm-hmm. And notwithstanding what happened in San Francisco, Campbell's had a great career. I mean, you played 10 years in the NFL, forget about it. So you obviously knew what you're doing there. But given the fact that you needed a pass rusher, given the fact you didn't have a fifth rounder that year, did you give any thought, if you can recall, to selecting Matt Judon out of Grand Valley State, who went to the Ravens and had an outstanding run with them and with the Patriots? Maybe not as well, didn't do as much last year, but turned out to be a pretty quality player at a blue chip position. Do you recall any interest there from y'all?
I honestly don't recall us talking about Judon, and the way Thomas ran our draft, he really ran most of it from his room, which means the conversations that we had under Terry with Kyle Smith running our meetings later Atlanta years, it was really run from Thomas's room, and maybe he had more conversations. Maybe they looked at him more, but again, was not really a play. We didn't do a top 30. I don't believe we did a private workout with him, and so far every one of these guys, including our next one, were all guys that we did something of that sort with. So I don't believe he was part of the conversation. Yeah, and we felt good about the steps that Vic Beasley was going to take, and we knew that he was going to take a step. The defense was going to be structured in a way where we expected Vic to take a big step, and then again we had our sights set on Dwight Freeney. Whether he had been, I don't believe he had been signed by the draft time, but I know there were conversations happening by that point anyway. So we felt better about our pass rush for that season anyway than maybe the outside probably looked like we did.
Okay. All right, so now we're in the 6th round. You talked about earlier how you felt set at the tackle position, but you took a whack at guard with Wes Schweitzer out of San Jose State. Now, was he a guy that y'all done a lot of work on, or maybe did he just really impress at pro day and you felt like, hey, listen, let's we got a great quarterback. Let's try to take a stab on the guy, maybe getting a value in the 6th round.
Yeah, no, they get to the 6th round pick, and again, we had Andy Levitre playing left guard, a consistent, solid pro that we knew still probably had at least a couple years left. And then at right guard, we had Chris Chester, who, again, was at the very end. Both lighter guys, both zone system guys. Again, we had Chris Morgan, one of the better zone O-line coaches in the NFL. We had Keith Carter, who has bounced around here and there, but again, good, solid O-line coach. And again, we knew we were going to be an outside zone team, and this was where we started to think about the future a little bit. A good, solid, key backup, 3 positions. So Wes was a left tackle at San Jose State that our West Coast scout, Saquon Joe, now with the Broncos, really liked. Not just the player, not just the fit and zone, his ability to move to guard. Again, he was a shorter-armed guy that we knew was going to be the case. But off the field, Wes was a machine. When we did our private workout with him, sending our brass out, their coaches, Thomas, DQ out there, Wes was, hey, can I have the schedule down to 5-minute increments? I'm not joking. That is what he asked for. Like, what time are they going to walk in the doors? Like, is it going to be 8 or is it going to be 8:05? It's like, hey, it's probably going to be around 8. Like, no, I need to know so I can structure my... Like, Wes was a structured guy. And he wanted, and to his credit, he wanted to be scheduled. He wanted to be ready. He wanted to have X, Y, and Z done. And again, he had good tackle film at San Jose State. We knew he wasn't going to be a tackle. We knew he was going to be a guard, maybe a center. He's obviously, you're going to be expected to play both. Again, could open the hip, could work laterally. The effort, the motor, the temperament, the urgency he played with was, again, one of those things that kind of set a standard moving forward with all those guys that, again, it was not an option to play, half speed. He was going full, which at times became an issue in practice. You'd rather pull the reins back than tell a guy, hey, come on, get going. Yes, that was Wes Schweitzer. And again, when we were having our top 30 visit, again, he's out on the coast, he's in California, we're getting everything set, and all of a sudden, you get a text from the GM that says, hey, we're going to try to bump everything up a half hour because, we made it a better time. All right, hey, Wes, our GM, our general manager who may draft you said we need to move up a half hour. No, I can't, I don't know if I'm going to have time. No, this needs to happen, Wes. And again, you kind of talk him through the process, and again, you try to delay your own group a little bit. And again, me and Bodie, who had conversations with him, his agent, through the process, hey, we got to try to get this schedule. And Wes was like, nah, I had everything set. And Wes, I know that. They may, and you give him, hey, maybe they're testing you. And it's like, oh man, maybe they are testing me. I guess I have to. And again, Wes was fantastic. He was all business. Again, him and Ben Garland, who was a converted defensive lineman, really got close. Again, under Alex Mack's max wing. But again, Wes was another one of those guys where we knew, again, if we could get him in the 6th, 7th, we really liked him. You see the way the board falls. This is going to be a future guy. And again, a guy that played snaps not only for us, but is still having himself an NFL career.
Did Saywan, you mentioned, who's won a number of Bartlett's awards and is as impressive a scout as there is out there. Did he prepare you for that kind of rigidity from
Yes.
Schweitzer?
Yeah, we again full credit to Saywan. He told us exactly, Wes is going to be rigid, structured. He's going to want all this. It was in very detailed in Saywan's report about the very detailed Wes Schweitzer. And again, to this day, I don't know if this was just a test by Thomas, a test by DQ, a test by SEMO to see how well Wes reacts. Obviously, we took him in the 6th round. He passed the test. But again, we knew, and again, we were prepared. SEMO, Keith Carter were prepared. When he comes in the building, you better be on your P's and Q's because he's going to expect everything to be detailed in that way. And again, there's always going to be that learning curve for NFL guys. Hey, this is business. This is your job. You're not going to be told like in college, be here at this exact time. But again, Wes is the kind of pro you want. He is an offensive lineman. He fit the group really well. And again, Alex Mack's personality, being a Cal guy, being a high IQ guy, really fit well. Those guys really meshed well in that O-line room.
It's really funny that kind of a 6th rounder was how much we're stressing out over jiggering the schedule for a 6th rounder, but I guess it paid off, and it was a great pick at almost at 200. So that's credit to y'all. All right, so wrapped up the draft in the 7th round with Devin Fuller, wide receiver out of UCLA.
Yeah, you get to the 7th round, and again, players that you've liked, players that you think highly of. Devin Fuller is good of off-field character. Brother Jordan Fuller, again, played at Ohio State, safety, captain type guy. Again, Devin was older brother and fit a lot of those same criteria. Devin was a speed guy, and again, you start thinking about fitting pieces in your offense. Again, we ended up going with an undrafted free agent that we signed as a free agent, Marvin Hall. We had guys like Taylor Gabriel, Aldrick Robinson. That was the Devin Fuller role that we really hoped he would come in. A speed, vertical type threat from inside or outside that was a high IQ, do stuff right on special teams. Maybe have him as a returner. Again, see if, tinker with him there. Unfortunately, the injury bug bit Devin. But again, Devin was, a super easy process. I believe we may have worked him out there. He was just one of those guys where, again, you talk about guys that just don't have a lot of questions. By the time the draft in early April comes, you know who Devin is. You know the player on the field. You know the person he is. If he's there, you're really comfortable taking him. You've got a role in your offense if he excels there. Unfortunately, didn't have much of an NFL career. Again, the injury bug, I believe he had an ACL either that 1st or 2nd year, just never quite cracked through. And but again, I don't know what he's doing now, but again, fully expect he's having success just because of the kind of character he has.
Now, y'all picked up now once the draft was over, y'all picked up a pretty good nickel corner as well, correct? Can we talk about Brian Poole a little bit?
Yeah, Brian Poole was again a teammate of Keanu Neal. Again, you start going through the process. Every time you see Keanu, you see Brian Poole. And again, he was a guy, I believe, was Matt Elam, I believe, was part of that same defense as Keanu was. And so Brian Poole, a talented player, sitting behind a couple of top draftable guys, and was one of those ones we felt comfortable with, knowing that, hey, if we draft Keanu and Brian goes undrafted, we feel really good about signing him. And again, I believe it was Anthony Robinson who was really the lead on Brian. Felt really good about him. Did Brian really probably overachieve as a starting nickel on our Super Bowl team? Yes, he's had himself a good career as well and really overachieved in that way. But Brian was a guy that, again, we were talking about. Again, we're sitting there looking at his card in the 7th there. And then again, is the way we see kind of other corners on the board. Hey, let's wait. We feel really good about this as an undrafted free agent. He came in and again, I believe he led. You always find out about the rookie wage earners based off compensatory of the NFL. I believe Brian led that group after that Super Bowl run that year as a nickel corner. Played significant. Again, when you're a nickel, 60% of the time you're playing a lot of snaps. So Brian was a big undrafted free agent, and then again, Sherrod Niesman played special team snaps, played some safety snaps, and then Josh Perkins was another undrafted free agent that was active on Super Bowl day, playing special teams, kind of that hybrid. He was kind of that F tight end out of Washington, really talented. Never kind of got over the hump. Again, he had some stuff that he was working through as well. But again, a talented player that was a good pass catcher, and we had several. Again, 3 significant contributors from that undrafted free agent class in a group that, again, I've talked about. I think we signed about 30 undrafted free agents that year, which was about double what the average is. It was a massive class. Really expected a lot of those out of those guys, and when you had 3 that were on your Super Bowl roster at the end of the year, that's significant. And again, credit to every area scout we had, every regional, national. Thomas, Rob, Steve Sabo was our college director at the time, who's with Minnesota now. Again, everybody that was a part of that process, again, huge credit to.
Yeah, great draft, and led to what, a year later, the Super Bowl appearance?
That again, it was 2017. It was that run that fall. The 2016 fall to the 2017 Super Bowl was again. It was those guys were thrown into the fire. Again, those top 4 round draft picks were starting most of the year, whether by injury, by need. West played a few snaps, but was mostly a backup. Again, Austin was a rotational guy, but you were relying heavily on a lot of rookie snap production and undrafted free agent snap production, and we're a big part of us getting to Houston where 28-3 happened, and again, we're a huge part of that next year when we made it to, I believe, the divisional round of the playoffs before we lost to Philadelphia up in Philadelphia. So again, it was the type of class that GMs love to have. If you can get 4 to 5 starters out of a draft class, you're going to be a GM for a long time. And again, was something that Thomas needed. We all knew Thomas needed it, and you really saw everybody come together to make sure it happened in every way. And so credit to everybody that was part of that group.
Okay, we're running out of time here because this has been fascinating. Every minute's been great, but let's kind of run through some names. I'm going to throw them at you kind of in rapid fire style. Let's start at the top of the draft. Obviously, you had Matt Ryan already. How much work did you do on Jared Goff out of Cal and Carson Wentz out of North Dakota State? And where did you have them? What did you think of them as prospects?
Yeah, again, not like you said, not a guys that we spent a lot of time focusing on. Again, Sewan Joe was responsible for North Dakota. Is crazy as the West Coast guy. Yeah. Again, he felt good about Carson Wentz. He still had some questions. Obviously, anytime you're coming out of that offense into the NFL, that's a big jump. Again, we like Jared Goff. Josh Rosen was a guy we did a good bit of work on, knowing that he might be the guy that fell. And again, depending on how the draft goes, again, when do you start thinking about the heir apparent? He was a guy we did some work on, but again, it was they were stacked Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, whether that was kind of because that was the consensus. Again, at the end of the day, it didn't matter to us. We knew they were going to be gone before 17, but you do your work on them just in case something crazy happens, for sure.
Sure, of course. We talked about Laremy Tunsil already. Big back who came out, man, wow, what a player. Still incredible player. Derrick Henry out of Alabama at 45. What were your thoughts on Derrick?
Yeah, again, you talk about having Devontae Freeman, and we had Tevin Coleman from the year before as well. So our backfield fairly set. We were not thinking about probably taking a back in day 1, day 2, maybe at all. Obviously, we didn't end up taking anybody. I don't remember doing a whole lot of work, if any, on running backs. We felt good about those 2 guys. Again, I remember the conversation just as you go through, hey, is this guy going to be effective? Again, the next Alabama running back, but this guy was, again, you talk about unicorns, what he looked like. And for us, the question was mostly about, does Derrick Henry fit what we want to do with our outside zone and with what we want to do split out running backs? Both Devontae and Tevin could split out, run some slot routes, work in the pass game. That is not That is not Derrick Henry's
Not
MO.
right.
But again, if you want to get him downhill, again, Derrick can be successful in any system. Again, at the end of the day, was a really good player that I think we all acknowledge was a good player, but again, just not for us with where we were at that time.
Mm-hmm. At number 47, a player who's had some success, but boy, had court a lot of controversy as well. Ohio State's Michael Thomas. What was the book on him?
Yeah, again, another guy that we liked. Again, we talk about we had, again, as I'm sure many people did. I believe he was a nephew or cousin to Keyshawn Johnson, and so there were some conversations we had there. Again, another guy we weren't expecting to take a wide receiver high. So again, a guy we did some work on, not extensive work. Again, we felt good about him. We liked him. I believe he was among the top small group of wide receivers in that draft, and I think he even fell a little bit more than we expected him to. But again, a guy that I got to see a little bit during my time at Ohio State, and was always fun to, hey, when you're a scouting assistant and you get the question asked of you, hey, what was your interaction with Michael? I had a little bit of insight from him. Again, my recollection was he had a phenomenal spring game in 2013 before he really came on the scene on the field, and was a guy that again, we know Michael Thomas's personality, and that was relevant in 2016 as it is now.
Were there any hints that he would be, let's say, the handful off the field that he turned out to be in the NFL?
Yeah. Oh yeah, no question. Again, the watching him in his career. Again, you look at the report that we had. Bob Cronenberg was our Midwest scout at the time that was doing Michael Thomas. Again, Cronin hit it nail on the head. You read that report, and then you read the news clippings and what's going on in New Orleans, and as a free agent, it's no surprise. And again, you credit those scouts when you can read the report and know what's coming.
The first one out of that draft class to be out of the league, which is fascinating given the 2019 season that he had and the impact that he had with the Saints offense. It's tragic that he wasn't able to kind of control those demons off the field. Dak Prescott out of Mississippi State turned out to be a pretty good player for the 135th pick in the draft.
Yeah. Another guy that, again, we didn't do extensive work on any quarterbacks. We knew it was going to be a late developmental guy. Honestly, Dak went about where we expected him to. It was a good conversation. Again, a lot of what we expected with what we had in our reports on him. Again, high character guy. He's developed as a passer. Again, you have those questions. For us, it was we had signed Matt Schaub. We had brought Matt Schaub back as a backup quarterback, and we were really comfortable there. And again, it comes back to Matt Ryan had been incredibly durable. We don't expect to see Matt Schaub. We're probably good at quarterback, and again, we were not ready to draft the heir apparent at that point. So again, liked him, recognized him, again, did our work on him. Not a guy we had a ton of conversations on, and again, it was he was one of those guys where the buzz, the draft pick, really all over the place. I think at the end of the day, his slot where we had him team graded, right about where he went, which again, you credit everybody that kind of set that board, because again, when the players come off where we expect them to, even when they're not going to be our guy, that's good credit to them and all the work that goes into it.
Now, in the book, we talk about how limited the interest was in West Alabama's Tyreek Hill. Obviously, now we know that he has been an incredibly talented player who's had his off-the-field issues as well, naturally. Was he a guy that y'all had any consideration for, or given the fact that the domestic violence issue or whatever, was he more or less off the board?
He was off the board. He was, and it was one of those ones where basically a one-liner, and he was put over where we were not going to touch him. There may have even been more that our scout had. Again, I believe it was Tumbo who was still doing the Southwest at the time. Again, you talk about among the lower character grades that you've ever seen, and there was no conversation on him. It was there's no point. We're not going to take him. We're never going to take him. Move him over. And again, the pick comes and goes where it did. And again, I believe that he's going to run fast and he's talented. But again, the all credit to Tyreek Hill and every organization he's been a part of that he's managed to stay on the field. And again, he's back in the news again with something that he's dealing with. Again, that is credit to the scouts. We knew the book on him, and the book has been incredibly accurate.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So when in Atlanta, if he was off your board, that meant he was not going to be an Atlanta Falcon under any
circumstance. Not going to be an Atlanta Falcon, period.
Fascinating.
No matter where that draft went, he was in the skull and bones section.
And we wrap up the book, the players that we focused on in the book with Jakeem Grant, who ran that incredible sub 4.2. I guess in the West Texas wind, which can be formidable, but it's still, he's blazing. Was there any consideration on taking a guy like that, who again, in a Kyle Shanahan offense, I could see could really be a weapon?
Yeah, and the interesting thing was on the Jakeem Grant was where exactly would we want him to play? We knew he could run. We knew he was a good football player. There were actually conversations, again, you think back to Seattle and Earl Thomas, what he did as a middle free safety eraser type that Ricardo Allen with less speed became for us. But again, it became, hey, where could we use a player when you draft in a player that late that maybe we can develop him, give him a role? Again, do you stick him as an offensive weapon, as a returner, do you teach him free safety and put him back there and just let him stand in the middle of the field and run sideline to sideline and take things away? And that we had some conversations on him, and again, with the way the rest of the roster was, I don't believe our special teams coach, Keith Armstrong, loved him as a special teams guy, as a returner type, which again, you sour on the interest. And again, there was never, it becomes one of those conversations where, hey, yeah, that'd be fun, but there's no conviction. Like, yes, I want this guy to be part of this group, and I have a role for him, which again, that's usually those later round guys, you want some conviction, and he was a guy like, hey, yeah, that'd be fun, that'd be cool. Yeah, if we want to take a flyer on him there, like that was the conversation as opposed to that conviction. So he was a guy we did some work on. I believe we may have done a private workout with him up there. But again, not a guy that when his name came off the board, there wasn't a collective sigh of disappointment. It was, hey, we're going to get another player. We're going to be good to go.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Fascinating hour. If you are listening and you found it as interesting as I did to kind of listen to Rodrik tell these stories, then you'll really enjoy my book, which is out now on Amazon. It's called Value Picks. It's easy to find on my social media. We'll be posting it. I'll be posting it on the Inside the League Twitter page often, and be talking about it and blogging about it and talk about it in our newsletter as well. Rodrik, any final thoughts on that draft class, or the Falcons did a phenomenal job that year, obviously. Anything to wrap things up, I guess.
Yeah, no, it was again really a unique year to see everything come together. That's again, every team, that's what you want to happen. Every team comes out of the draft feeling good about the draft picks they take. But to see the process, the urgency from once these guys were drafted on both sides of the ball, the time that was spent, and obviously the run that we had to the Super Bowl that year was really, really a special group. And again, getting to be a part of it, going from scouting assistant to starting to do some advanced scouts at the end of the year, knowing that we were going to be one of the top seeds in the playoffs, and again, ultimately getting down to Houston for the Super Bowl. Again, the fun memories that you have. And again, there is nothing like being a part of it. There is nothing like the intensity and the tension in a draft room, even when it's for 7 or 8 hours over the course of 3 days, and everything that can go down and happen. And ton of fun, and was a really special year, and a really phenomenal group of scouts that was part of that group. Again, obviously Thomas gets a lot of credit as the GM, as is rightly so, and Dan Quinn is the head coach, but every scout that was a part of that group had a major role to play, and everybody that did get mentioned or didn't get mentioned, pro department, college department, it was truly a team effort, and everybody across the board was it was ton of fun in 2016.
Had to be. Well, if you read and you like to read about football, there's more fun to be had by checking out Value Picks. More stories like what Rodrik has shared all throughout it. 163 pages of inside football on a fascinating year. Laremy Tunsil is just the start of all of everything that you can kind of pick up from that league. So many great from that year. So many great stories. So many great players. Check it out, and also check us out tomorrow when we will be talking to Eric Edholm about the 2025 draft. Lots of great stories. Lots of great narratives already for that one. It's just right around the corner. Hope to check you out then.
Agents, before we go, make sure you go check out Agent Live 360. It is at agentlive360.com for everything you need for your agency, from players to coaches, managing profiles, tracking invoices, sending invoices, getting paid, keeping up on every element of your entire agency. Notification emails, file folder storage, ROI, transactions, invoices, calendar, contracts, teams, reps, everything all in one spot for you. That is Agent Live 360. Hop on, request a demo. Yours truly will hop on, walk you through it. I can promise you we will talk some football as well. Sign up now with code TRIAL90 for a 90-day, 3-month trial at just $10 a month for Agent Live 360. That's at agentlive360.com. Go check it out now.